This is Alexander Baer explaining adverse food reactions for the Food Allergies and Intolerances course, winter semester. So Charlotte, there's 5 different types of adverse food reactions. The first is a psychological food reaction. And that one's pretty straightforward. It's like if you're a kid and your mom wanted you to eat broccoli and you don't like broccoli, you didn't like it, and she was like forcing you to, and now you're like, anytime you see broccoli it makes you sick. That's a psychological food reaction. And the test for it is pretty simple. I would just ask you, what foods don't you like? So the second type is food poisoning. And if you've ever had food poisoning before, it's kind of know what it is. It happens within 4 to 6 hours after you eat something that has a bug, like a virus or bacteria in it. It makes you have a high fever. You could have nausea. You could be on the toilet. Have diarrhea, vomiting. It's not very fun. So if there is like a large outbreak, you could test for it by going back and finding the source of the bacteria or virus. But usually it's not done unless there's like a huge outbreak, and it would pass within like 24 to 48 hours, and then you'd be fine after that. The third type is a food allergy, and that's an immune system reaction. Specifically, it's an IgE antibody. We don't have to really get into all that. What's important to know about food allergies is they can be really serious. You could have symptoms like hives. That could be like a whole systemic reaction, like throughout your body. There could be swelling, and there could be swelling of your throat, and that can cause anaphylaxis, which can lead to anaphylactic shock, and that could be life-threatening. So people who have really serious food allergies, they'll usually carry an EpiPen, which is adrenaline, and you can inject it to make sure that doesn't happen, and then you have to be rushed to the hospital. So food allergies, they're very, they can be very serious. It depends, but if it's a very serious one, like say a peanut allergy, someone eats it, they might have a reaction immediately, or it could take hours to develop. So if you wanted to test for a food allergy, you can do a blood test for the IgE antibody, or you can do a skin prick test. But if you've grown up and you have that type of reaction, you probably already know what you're allergic to if it's been very serious. And if not, you can go and do those tests. So the next type of reaction is a food sensitivity reaction. And that's also mediated by the immune system, but it's a different type of antibody. That's an IgG instead of an IgE. So the food sensitivity, it wouldn't be as serious of a reaction as a food allergy. And it depends, but it could take, it might develop very quickly after you eat, or it could take days. So sometimes it's really hard to know exactly what food you're eating that's causing that sensitivity. Another thing that's a bit difficult with food sensitivities is people have different reactions to the food. So for instance, say you're eating wheat, you might have a reaction to gluten, and that might occur immediately. You might feel nauseous, you might feel pain somewhere. But then another person eats gluten, and they may not react until 3 days later, and they might have something random like pain in their foot or brain fog. So it's kind of hard to determine because of those varying symptoms. Really, symptoms can happen anywhere there's inflammation in the body, and that's pretty much everywhere. And we can test for that by doing an IgG antibody blood test. But there's a simpler test, which is just a food elimination and reintroduction. So we take the foods we suspect that you're sensitive to. We take those out of your diet for 8 weeks, and then 8 weeks later we'll reintroduce those. And if you are sensitive to them, that period of 8 weeks, once you're not eating them, once you eat it again, then your body will have like a very distinct reaction to it, and you'll know, okay, I can't eat gluten, or I can't eat yogurt, or any kind of dairy, something like that. So the next type is called a food intolerance, and that's not mediated by the immune system. It's a little different. So a food intolerance is when you don't have a certain enzyme to digest a certain food. So one you've probably heard of is lactose intolerance. That's one a lot of people are familiar with. And that's just, you don't have this enzyme to break down this food. And the symptoms of that, they're usually the same in most people. Like for instance with lactose intolerance, someone eats dairy, they feel nauseous, they want to throw up, they have bloating, and those reactions are similar in most people. And we can test for that in a couple ways. One of the most effective ways is also a food elimination reintroduction. You can also do a breath test. That's when your body's not absorbing the food, you have bacteria in your gut, and they start breaking that food down, and it releases like some gas like hydrogen and methane that can be picked up with the test. We can also do a genetic test. So sometimes you have a gene that's either mutated or just is turned off for some reason, and those genes encode for enzymes. So we can go and look at those genes and see how they're working, and maybe they're not working properly, and that could be the cause of it. But the most simple, really, and effective one is the food elimination and reintroduction. So what we can do for you is find out what foods you're either sensitive or intolerant to. Keep those out of your diet for 8 weeks, and then follow up with that and see what you're reacting to after you keep those foods out of your diet.